I want to tell you something that took me 13 years of emergency medicine to fully understand. And it is something the health industry almost never talks about, because it does not sell supplements. It does not fill gyms. It does not trend on social media. In 13 years on the emergency front line, I have watched people die early who did everything right. They exercised, they ate well, they took their medications, they had normal cholesterol, normal blood pressure, no obvious red flags, and they still ended up in front of me too soon. And I have watched other people who by every conventional measure should have been declining, live sharp, functional, energized lives well into their 80s and 90s. Same country, same healthcare system, completely different outcomes. For a long time, I assumed the difference was biological luck, genetics, random variation. But the longer I spent studying the population-level research, the long-term cohort data, the decades-long studies that track thousands of people from midlife to death, the clearer one pattern became. And it was not the pattern I expected. My name is Dr. Miles, 13 years in emergency medicine, watching what kills people up close and studying in my own time what separates the people who make it from the people who don't. What I'm about to share does not come from wellness trends or supplement marketing. It comes from the strongest human lifespan data we have. And at the end of this video, I will reveal the single hidden factor that the research keeps pointing to above everything else. It is not a diet, it is not exercise, and it will probably surprise you. But first, let me show you why everything most people focus on is only part of the picture. Habit number 7. Your body clock is either protecting you or aging you, and most people don't know which. Most people think sleep is about hours. Get 7 or 8 hours, and you are covered. But when you look at the actual longevity research, sleep duration is only part of the story. The part that matters even more, the part almost nobody is talking about, is timing. Specifically, whether your daily rhythms are anchored to a consistent biological clock or quietly drifting into chaos. Your circadian rhythm is a 24-hour internal clock embedded in every cell of your body. It controls hormone release, DNA repair, immune timing, brain waste clearance, and metabolic function. When that clock runs predictably, your body performs every repair and regulatory process at exactly the right time. When it is disrupted, those processes happen out of sequence, or not at all. The UK Biobank study tracked over 400,000 people and found that those with disrupted circadian rhythms had significantly higher rates of cardiovascular disease, cancer, mood disorders, and early death. The effect size was comparable to obesity, not comparable to skipping a workout, comparable to obesity. The WHO has classified shift work as a probable carcinogen because circadian disruption suppresses melatonin, which is not just a sleep hormone. It is one of your body's most potent antioxidants, protecting your mitochondria from oxidative damage every single night. When bright light after dark blocks melatonin production, that protection disappears. Night after night, year after year. The fix is not complicated. Morning sunlight within 1 hour of waking resets your master clock. Consistent sleep and wake times, even on weekends, anchor your biology. Dimming lights after dark allows melatonin to rise naturally. Eating your largest meal earlier in the day aligns food intake with peak insulin sensitivity. These are not hacks. They are the conditions your biology was designed to operate under. And restoring them is one of the most powerful longevity moves available to anyone, completely free. Habit number 6. The metabolic trap that is aging people 20 years before they feel it. Here is something that should alarm every person watching this. You can have completely normal blood sugar on a standard test and still be metabolically broken. And that silent metabolic dysfunction can be driving you toward heart disease, dementia, and early death for a decade before a single symptom appears. The test most doctors run is fasting glucose. But fasting glucose is a late marker. By the time it is elevated, the underlying problem has already been present for years. The earlier signal is fasting insulin. When your cells start becoming resistant to insulin, your pancreas compensates by producing more and more of it just to keep blood sugar within the normal range. That state, called hyperinsulinemia, is silently toxic. It drives chronic inflammation, promotes visceral fat accumulation, raises blood pressure, and accelerates arterial damage, all while your standard blood test looks completely fine. A study following 3,000 people for over a decade found that those with the highest insulin resistance had more than double the risk of cardiovascular death compared to those with the lowest. Even after controlling for weight, cholesterol, and blood pressure. Insulin resistance is an independent killer, and most people have no idea it is happening inside them. Two people can eat the exact same meal and have completely different metabolic responses. One person's blood sugar rises gently and returns smoothly to baseline. The other person spikes sharply and crashes. That crash triggers a cortisol and adrenaline response. Every single time. Multiple times a day. Over years, that pattern hardens arteries, damages kidneys, inflames the brain, and accelerates biological aging in every system simultaneously. Metabolic stability is not about weight. It is not about BMI. It is about whether your internal chemistry is calm or in constant crisis. And it is one of the most modifiable variables in how long you live. Habit number 5. Inflammation is killing people silently for decades before they feel anything. If I could make every person watching this get one blood test tomorrow, it would not be cholesterol. It would be C-reactive protein. Because chronic low-grade inflammation, what researchers now call inflammaging, is quietly driving almost every major cause of early death. And you cannot feel it happening. This is not the inflammation you feel after twisting your ankle. That is acute inflammation. Healthy, temporary, purposeful. Inflammaging is different. It is systemic. It is silent. And it runs continuously in the background, damaging blood vessel walls, crossing the blood-brain barrier to destroy neural connections, disrupting hormonal signaling, and accelerating cellular aging in every tissue simultaneously. Heart disease does not start with high cholesterol. It starts with inflammation damaging the endothelium, the single-cell thick lining of your blood vessels. Once that lining is damaged, LDL cholesterol gets embedded into the arterial wall as part of a repair response. Plaque forms, arteries stiffen, and decades later, a person ends up in my emergency department convinced the heart attack came out of nowhere. It did not come out of nowhere. It came out of 30 years of silent inflammation that nobody measured and nobody addressed. The same mechanism drives Alzheimer's disease. Inflammatory molecules breach the blood-brain barrier. Microglia, the brain's immune cells, become chronically activated and begin clearing away synapses. The connections between neurons disappear, memory goes, cognition deteriorates, and it was inflammation, not just amyloid, driving the destruction all along. What drives inflammaging? Ultra-processed food, chronic sleep disruption, sedentary behavior, social isolation, visceral fat, chronic unresolved stress. These are not exotic exposures. They are the default conditions of modern life, and every single one of them is modifiable. Inflammaging is not inevitable. It is a consequence of inputs. Change the inputs and you change the trajectory. Habit number 4. Muscle is not a fitness goal. It is a survival organ. Most people think of muscle as something you build for aesthetics. Bigger arms, better posture, maybe some functional strength for carrying groceries. That framing is costing people their lives. Muscle is the largest insulin-sensitive tissue in your body. It is the primary site where glucose is cleared from your bloodstream after every meal. The more muscle mass you carry, the more efficiently your body handles blood sugar, the lower your insulin response, and the less metabolic damage accumulates in your organs over time. Lose the muscle and insulin resistance rises. And we've already covered where that leads. But muscle does something even more profound. It secretes molecules called myokines every time it contracts. These molecules travel through the bloodstream with direct anti-inflammatory effects on the brain, heart, liver, and immune system. One myokine called irisin crosses the blood-brain barrier and stimulates BDNF production, the protein that protects neurons and supports memory. Every time your muscles contract, they are sending chemical signals that protect your brain. A study tracking 140,000 adults across 17 countries found that grip strength predicted all-cause mortality more accurately than blood pressure. For every 5 kilogram decrease in grip strength, the risk of dying from any cause increased by 16%. That is not because grip strength is magical. It is because grip strength is a proxy for total muscle quality and systemic biological resilience. After the age of 30, sedentary adults lose 3 to 5% of muscle mass per decade. That loss accelerates after 60. By 80, many people have lost 30 to 40% of the muscle they had in their prime, not just strength. Metabolic protection, immune function, brain support. 2 sessions of resistance training per week is enough to reverse this. Not 2 hours a day, 2 sessions a week. The people who made it to 90 functionally did not wait until they were weak to think about this. They kept stimulating muscle for decades, and their bodies are the proof. Habit number 3, the nervous system truth that the entire wellness industry gets wrong. Everyone thinks the answer to stress is avoiding it. Meditation apps, digital detoxes, saying no to more things. The entire wellness industry is built on the idea that stress is the enemy and should be minimized at all costs. But the longest living people on Earth do not avoid stress. They experience enormous amounts of it. And yet they outlive almost everyone around them. The question was never how much stress you experience. It is whether your nervous system can recover from it. Your autonomic nervous system has 2 branches: sympathetic, which activates you under threat; parasympathetic, which governs rest, digestion, and repair. Longevity does not come from living permanently in parasympathetic mode. It comes from a nervous system flexible enough to shift between both quickly and completely. Heart rate variability, or HRV, measures this flexibility. Higher HRV means your nervous system is adaptable. Lower HRV means it is stuck in chronic activation, quietly suppressing immune function, elevating cortisol, disrupting sleep, and accelerating cellular aging. A meta-analysis of over 40 studies found that low HRV predicted cardiovascular mortality independently of every other risk factor. People with the lowest HRV had nearly double the risk of dying from heart disease. Researchers measuring telomere length, a direct marker of biological age, found that people with chronic unresolved stress had telomeres equivalent to 10 additional years of aging. Not 10% more risk, 10 years older at the cellular level. The solution is not avoidance, it is recovery. Exercise stresses the system and then allows full recovery. Breathwork activates the vagus nerve directly, shifting the body into parasympathetic dominance within minutes. Consistent sleep timing allows the nervous system to reset nightly. The stressor has to end. Your system has to receive the signal that it is safe. Without that signal, stress becomes biology, and that biology shortens life. Habit number 2. What you do every day without thinking about it is either saving or costing you years. Here is something the Blue Zone researchers found that almost nobody talks about. The longest living populations on Earth are not doing structured exercise. They are not following meal plans. They are not tracking macros or wearing glucose monitors. What they are doing all day, every day, without thinking about it, is moving. Not intensely, constantly. Walking to the market, tending a garden, cooking from scratch, sitting on the floor and standing back up dozens of times daily. This is what researchers call non-exercise activity thermogenesis, or NEAT. All the movement you accumulate outside of structured exercise. And in terms of metabolic impact across a lifetime, it dwarfs what happens in a gym. When you move consistently at low intensity throughout the day, you activate AMPK, a cellular energy sensor that improves insulin sensitivity, stimulates mitochondrial biogenesis, and keeps fat oxidation elevated for hours. You are not burning a large number of calories in one burst. You are signaling to your metabolism to stay active for 12 to 14 hours a day. That signal, repeated daily for decades, creates a metabolic baseline that structured exercise simply cannot replicate on its own. A study tracking 17,000 people found those taking more than 7,000 steps daily had a 50 to 70% lower risk of dying from any cause compared to those taking fewer than 4,000. Not intensity, not gym sessions, daily low-level movement. The average office worker moves for fewer than 2 hours in a 16-hour waking day. That is not a lifestyle choice. That is a slow biological emergency. Build a life where movement is unavoidable, and you have built one of the most powerful longevity systems available. Habit number 1. The single hidden factor that separates long life from early death. I told you at the start that the answer would not be what you expected. And here it is. It is not what you eat. It is not how much you exercise. It is not your sleep score, or your inflammatory markers, or your grip strength. The single factor that the research keeps returning to, across every major long-term human study ever conducted as the strongest predictor of who lives long and who does not is the quality of your relationships. Specifically, whether you feel emotionally safe with the people around you. The Harvard study of adult development began in 1938. It has followed over 700 people and their children for more than 85 years. Researchers measured everything: diet, exercise, cholesterol, genetics, income, mental health, career success. They tracked people through wars, marriages, divorces, illness, and death. And when they analyzed all of it to find the single strongest predictor of who lived longest and healthiest, the answer was relationships. Not wealth, not genetics, not perfect health behaviors, relationships. Social isolation is as harmful to your health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. It chronically elevates cortisol, suppresses immune function, increases inflammatory markers, and accelerates cellular aging at every level. A meta-analysis of 148 studies involving over 300,000 adults found that people with strong social connections had a 50% higher likelihood of survival compared to those who were isolated. 50%. That is not a footnote in the data. That is one of the most powerful biological signals in all of longevity research. And here's the nuance most people miss. It is not about quantity. You can be surrounded by people and feel completely alone. You can have 1,000 followers and zero real connection. What matters is whether you have relationships where you feel genuinely known, where you do not have to perform, where vulnerability is safe. The Harvard researchers found that people in high conflict marriages had worse health outcomes than people who were single. A bad relationship is worse than no relationship at all. Modern life has systematically dismantled the infrastructure for this. We live alone. We work remotely. We scroll instead of talking. We order food instead of sharing it. And we are paying for that collapse with our health and our years. Every blue zone population shares one thing above everything else. Not a diet, not an exercise routine, a community. People who eat together, age together, and are never left to carry life entirely alone. Invest in your relationships, not superficial networking. Real, emotionally safe, consistent human connection. That single factor, more than any supplement, any protocol, any optimization strategy, is what the data says will add years to your life. And life to your years. 13 years of watching people die too early has taught me this. The people who make it are not the ones who optimize the hardest. They are the ones who built stability, consistent movement woven into daily life, a metabolism kept calm by predictable rhythms, muscle maintained through decades of simple effort, a nervous system that recovers quickly from stress, inflammation kept low by the inputs they chose every day, and relationships deep enough that their biology never had to carry everything alone. Longevity is not built in extremes. It is not found in expensive interventions or dramatic overhauls. It is built quietly, through small daily behaviors that compound for decades while nobody is watching. Your biology is responding to what you do every single day, not occasionally, every day. It is never too late to start, and it is never too early. If this video gave you something real, please subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. It takes 2 seconds, and it helps this content reach more people who genuinely need it. Drop a comment below and tell me which habit surprised you most. I will see you in the next one.